So, Scott wakes up from his sleep dreaming about a girl, right? He shoots the breeze with his roommate Wallace for a bit, and then hits the scene to jam with his band. After that, he cruises to a house party with his crew, and peeps a girl who low-key looks like the one from his dream. He tries to spark a convo, but it totally bombs. Scott bounces, and guess what? He bumps into Julie Powers, who's like, "Why are you even here?" She spills the tea that the girl he tried to talk to is Ramona Flowers and spills some deets about her.
Welcome back to Real Savant, where we bring you recaps of the most awesome movies and TV shows. From action, to horror, to comedy, to something the family will enjoy. We have something for everyone. Today we bring you Scott Pilgrim Takes Off, where we follow what happened in Season 1, Episode 1, titled Scott's Precious Little Life. Just sit back, relax, and enjoy the ride. If you're new here, don't forget to subscribe and ring that notification bell so you never miss an update.
So, Julie's all like, "Don't even think about talking to her, Scott." But Scott's back in his crib, orders a Netflix DVD, crossing fingers that Ramona, who works there, will drop it off. He's on the lookout, and bam, Ramona rolls up, hands him the DVD, ready to bounce. Scott's like, "Hold up, are you the dream girl?" And Ramona's like, "Maybe, because there's a space subway in your noggin." So Scott switches gears and asks Ramona to chill with him later. She's down, so they link up at night, and Ramona spills the tea on why she made the move to Toronto. They chat about work, weather, and their vibes for a bit. Meanwhile, there's this mystery dude lurking, talking about some game starting. They decide to bounce to Ramona's pad to dodge a snowstorm. While Ramona's changing, Scott sneaks into her room, and boom, they lock lips. Ramona puts the brakes on with Scott, but she's cool about it, saying she'll decide when she's ready to take things to the next level. Meanwhile, enter Matthew, Ramona's first evil ex-boyfriend. He links up with Gideon, the head honcho of the League of Evil Exes. Gideon spills the tea to Matthew about Scott, and spills that Scott's dating a high school chick and hasn't spilled the deets yet. Plus, he clues Matthew in on Scott's mad fighting skills. Matthew's all confident he can take on Scott regardless. The next day, Scott spills the beans to Ramona about his band, and invites her to their gig that night. She's on board. Scott swings back home and spills to Wallace about his hangout with Ramona. Wallace straight up tells Scott to cut ties with Knives, his current girlfriend. Oh, and there's a letter for Scott. Surprise, surprise, it's from Matthew, challenging him to a showdown. Scott straight up ghosts that letter, tosses it like yesterday's news. He hits up Wallace, asking if he's rolling to the band's gig tonight, and Wallace is in. Knives crashes the concert, and we meet Scott's sis, Stacy. Before they can spill the beans to Knives about the breakup plan, she spots Scott, screams his name from a distance. Cue Scott panic mode. He sees Knives and Ramona heading his way and pulls a quick escape backstage. Kim, one of his bandmates, clocks the vibe and asks Scott what's up, but he's playing it off like he's all good. As his bandmates stress about another crew flaking, Scott's eyes are locked on Ramona and Knives. Even though Steven suggests canceling, Scott talks his band into rocking their set. But in the midst of the jam, Matthew crashes the scene, aiming to throw hands with Scott. Dude defends himself, and it turns out Matthew's one of Ramona's 7 evil exes, a whole squad of powerful exes. Plot twist: Matthew sent that letter as a heads up about the impending showdown. So, Scott spills the tea that he straight up ignored that letter. Matthew spills what it said. Basically, Scott's gotta take down all of Ramona's exes if he wants to keep her around. Then, out of the blue, Ramona hits Scott with an apology for not cluing him in earlier. She thought the whole thing was a joke, apparently. Ramona spills about her history with Matthew, how they teamed up back in middle school. Matthew had magic moves, and she was all about that super strength. They tag-teamed against jocks trying to date her. Fast forward to the showdown. Scott and Matthew throw down, fists flying. Spoiler alert, Scott takes the loss and literally turns into coins. Matthew's shocked at how easy it was, and Ramona's just staring at those coins, shook.
Where we follow what happened in Season 1, Episode 3, titled A League of Their Own.
Now that Scott was defeated by Matthew, Ramona and the crowd bounce from the venue. A janitor spills the beans to Knives, dropping the bomb that Scott's supposedly dead. The next day, Ramona rolls up to Scott's funeral, overhearing Neil and Kim chatting about his demise. Kim drops the truth that Scott was always taking on powerful enemies, and it was basically inevitable he'd kick the bucket someday. Knives spots Ramona and straight up accuses her of being the reason behind Scott's death, causing a scene in front of everyone. Scott's ex, Envy, belts out a song in his memory. While she's crooning, the rest of the X-League, including Gideon, score invites. All of them are summoned to a special dinner at Gideon's undercover pad. Ramona swings by Scott's coffin, offering an apology. The X-League members roll up to Gideon's lair, curious about the mysterious party planner. Matthew pops in, revealing he's the brains behind it all. He's gathered the crew to hash out a hiccup in their plan. Despite beating Scott in a brawl, Gideon got the cold shoulder from Ramona. Now, Gideon spills the beans on his true motives to the entire league, causing some to question him. Matthew throws down the idea that Gideon should fight him for the leader spot. After Roxy teases Gideon for trying to dodge the situation, he caves in and accepts Matthew's challenge. On the rooftop, they lay out the rules, but the two dudes start arguing. Matthew eventually gets the upper hand, and Gideon's sidekick urges him to give it all up to Matthew.
Where we follow what happened in Season 1, Episode 3, titled Ramona Rents a Video.
So, Neil's all sorry, can't chat, gotta write this movie. But he's stuck, can't put pen to paper, so he crashes. In the middle of the night, he spots someone at his computer, freaks out, and falls asleep scared. Morning comes, and bam! There's a whole screenplay on his desk. Dude thinks he wrote it in his sleep. Meanwhile, Ramona switches up her hair game and links up with Julie at the coffee joint, and she's convinced someone kidnapped Scott but faked his death. Julie's not vibing with it, but Ramona spills the tea, sharing that she heard Scott's voice in this wild subspace highway dream. It triggers her to revisit the spot where Scott and his crew used to chill. Ramona peeps some security footage of his brawl with Matthew and spots someone popping a portal and snatching Scott. Now she's on a mission to rescue him and spills to Julie about how she kinda dug her date with him. Julie, in the meantime, spills the beans about all the key players in Scott's life, from Steven to Kim. Meanwhile, we catch glimpses of Steven and Kim doing their thing. Steven's stressing about finding a replacement bass player for Scott, but Kim has this genius idea. They should hit up Knives to join the band. Knives bust out some skills, and Steven and Kim are blown away by her talent. Knives spills that she's pretty new to the instrument, leaving the two in shock. Kim bounces for work, leaving Steven to work his charm on convincing Knives to be part of the crew. Meanwhile, Kim rolls up to her video store gig, and her coworker drops the bomb that Ramona's looking for her. Ramona spills to Kim that Scott's not 6 feet under, and she's dead certain about it. Ramona wants the lowdown on Kim's past with Scott. Kim spills that Scott's a total idiot, but she can't deny he was her first love, even if it all crashed and burned. Ramona's like, "It's not the worst, we're still buds." Just then, Roxy rolls in, claiming she's gonna win Ramona's heart with her emotional smarts. A brawl breaks out in the store between Ramona and Roxy. Amidst the chaos, Ramona reflects on the screw-ups in their relationship. Ramona lays down a heartfelt apology, expressing regret for her past actions. Roxy opens up about feeling worthless when Ramona bounced, and forgives her, but is still gunning to win their brawl. Things take a turn when they both tumble off a plane, and Ramona saves Roxy. They patch things up with Kim around. Ramona spills the tea to Roxy that Scott's very much alive and floats the idea of being friends. Roxy, in a quick twist, plants a kiss on Kim before peacing out, wishing Ramona good luck. Ramona and Kim tidy up the video store, and there's this cardboard cutout of Lucas. Kim, catching wind that he's one of Ramona's exes, starts pondering if she's gonna have to square off with the whole ex crew, Lucas style. Ramona's on a mission, thinking Lucas might be the mastermind behind Scott's disappearance. Meanwhile, Julie rushes into her crib and spots a scruffy Gideon. Before stepping inside, Gideon spills that he switched up his name and used to go by Gordon Goose. He spills about losing everything and using his last bucks to come to see her. The episode wraps with Julie giving the nod and letting Gideon inside.
Where we follow what happened in Season 1, Episode 4, titled Whatever.
Lucas's agent hits him up, giving him a heads up to stop acting wild in public or risk tanking his whole career. She hooks him up with a sweet gig in Toronto and tells him to get his act together, warning it could be his last shot. Cut to Ramona, rolling up to Toronto Wood Studios to see if Lucas brought Scott along. She spots Neil hustling on set, and it blows her mind that he penned a script for Lucas. Ramona notices Envy playing her part in the movie and puts 2 and 2 together. Neil's script is straight up inspired by the real deal Scott Pilgrim saga. Neil gives Ramona a ride to Lucas's trailer in his car. Ramona starts grilling Lucas about Scott, but he's all caught up stressing about his performance in the movie. Wallace joins the scene at the set, rolling up on Ramona and Neil. His mission? To check out the actor playing him in the film. Wallace ain't impressed, and the director hands him the reins to take over the role. Ramona heads back to Lucas, who finally lets her in. Lucas spills that the script is trash, and he's clueless why she showed up. Ramona drops the bomb that Scott's still kicking and straight up asks if Lucas knows where he's at. Lucas plays the innocence card, denying any hand in Scott's vanishing act. He finds it weird that Ramona's on the hunt for a guy with a teen girlfriend, but she claps back, pointing out that Lucas is basically doing the same by stepping into Scott's shoes for the film. Out of nowhere, paparazzi ninjas ambush Lucas, and it's all chaos. Think thrilling chases and epic battle scenes. Ramona jumps into the mix to help him out, leaving Lucas questioning why she'd bother. Ramona throws it back, reminding him of the time she had his back with skateboarding stunts in the past. It triggers Lucas's memory, recalling seeing her with another dude, breaking his skateboard, and turning to acting to mend his shattered heart. After a moment of reflection, Lucas gives props to Ramona for guiding him to the lavish life he's living. Ramona assists Lucas in making a studio escape, and he hints that he's throwing in the towel on the movie gig, suggesting his agent is ditching him. Lucas reassures Ramona that he's not the Scott Snatcher. They exchange goodbyes, parting ways. Ramona then spots Todd emerging from a portal and gets suspicious about his involvement in Scott's vanishing act. Todd links up with the studio security, boldly announcing his takeover as Scott's replacement in the film. Where we follow what happened in Season 1, Episode 5, titled Lights, Camera, Sparks? So, the show kicks off with this promo vid featuring Envy, Todd, Neil, and the crew backstage. Ramona spills in her interview that she's doing the whole stunt double thing just to get close to Todd, suspecting he's involved in Scott's mysterious disappearance. She tries to grill Todd about Scott, but Envy shuts her down, saying they'll talk later. Then it flips to Envy, and Todd's struggling to nail a scene, and the director's fed up with their lovey-dovey interruptions. Wallace has this wild idea: make Todd smooch him instead. So they go for it, and it totally weirds out everyone except the director. Knives and Steven hit up Ramona, asking her to pass along this song they penned for Envy to belt out in the flick. Wallace and Todd get cozy practicing a steamy scene, and then it cuts to another interview with Ramona spilling tea about her past fling with Todd. Meanwhile, Envy spills her own deets to Todd, and they're on totally different wavelengths about Todd's moon-punching move. After the interviews, Ramona calls out Todd, trying to get the 411 on Scott. Todd dodges her and bolts off somewhere with Wallace through a vegan portal. Okay, so on day 2, Ramona spills to the interviewer that she's low-key trying to separate Todd from Wallace. Then Todd spills to a new interviewer that he's vibing with Wallace, and that leads Todd to dump Envy for Wallace. Drama alert. They crash Wallace's interview, and Envy makes Todd spill that he loves him. But here's the kicker. Wallace doesn't feel the same, crushing Todd's heart. Todd storms off, and Envy straight up smacks Wallace for the heartbreak. Wallace is like, chill, fight my stunt doubles instead. Envy drags Ramona into the stunt double showdown, and she beats them with Wallace's backup. So, Ramona and Envy roll up to Todd's trailer and he invites them in. Todd spills that what he had with Wallace was something special, and Envy is bummed, thinking Todd saying their thing wasn't. Ramona tries to switch it up to Scott and drops the security video bomb, and Envy spills that the portal is epic but denies Todd made it. Envy tells Ramona to ditch Scott, calling him a loser like Todd. Ramona quits her stunt double gig and bounces from the studio. Matthew swoops in, fires everyone, and Knives and Steven hustle Matthew for a business deal, snagging a card. Ramona's all up in Matthew's grill, asking about his glow-up. Matthew spills that he's here to shut down the movie, cause it's messing with his rep. Then Ramona hits him with the bombshell. Scott's alive. Cue Matthew's mind-blown reaction. Turns out, he's the big boss of the League of Evil Exes now. He spills the tea on Gideon and Julie crossing paths with Ramona. Ramona's like, time to face the music, and gears up to confront Gideon and Julie. Meanwhile, Robot 01 is lurking in the shadows, keeping tabs on Ramona from afar. The episode wraps up with a seriously ominous shot of Julie and Gideon chilling on the couch, where we follow what happened in Season 1, Episode 6, titled, Who Did It? Lucas hits up Gideon, but Gideon's ghosted him because he's still salty about Lucas not having his back in that Matthew showdown. Anyway, Lucas rolls up to Julie's spot, lets himself in, and smooth talks Gideon into hanging out. They have a blast doing random stuff, and when Julie walks in, she's shook by the chaos they caused. Oh, and there's this Robot 01 that freaks her out, and it bounces out the window in a hilarious way. Meanwhile, Ramona spills the tea to Julie that Gideon's crashing at her place. They dip out together. On the flip side, Steven and Knives are rehearsing for a gig with Matthew. Kim's all curious about how they convince Matthew to bankroll their new thing. Flashback vibes. Steven and Knives hit up Matthew's secret lair, pitch him a Broadway musical gig, and he's all in, sharing his past performer life. Back to the present. Matthew's on board. Steven figures Neil's probably bummed about the Scottish flick-flop, but Neil's like, I don't care. Didn't even write the script. Classic. Now Neil's spilling the deets about finding someone at his desk one night who probably wrote the script. They hit up his room to chat it out. Kim's all, let's spill the tea to Ramona. It might help her detective game. Julie spills to Ramona about Gideon's past life as Gordon Goose, saying he was a big shot at her school, but then he went all Gideon Graves and bounced when he couldn't score a girl's love. Julie's not vibing with Gideon crashing at her place, saying he used to be more ambitious until his inner evil took over. Ramona's skeptical, wondering if Gideon and Julie are playing games. Julie swears they're on the straight and narrow, so Ramona scratches them off her suspect list and heads to Julie's spot to grill Gideon. Flashback time to the epic showdown from the start. Julie's ready to throw hands at Lucas and Gideon for trashing her place, but Ramona's like, "Hold up!" She gives Lucas a reality check and tells Gideon to quit being a loser and treat Julie better than he treated her. Ramona's all up in Lucas's grill about Robot 01 when he spills that he caught it spying on her at the movie set. Turns out, the twins are the masterminds behind the robot, dropping another clue in Ramona's detective bag. Lucas and Ramona peace out, leaving Gideon to share his fresh plan with Julie, and she's vibing with it. Ramona gathers the squad, Kim, and others to pool their info and crack the case. She points fingers at the twins, claiming they're the baddies. Ramona spills the tea on Robot 01, boasting vegan portal powers stronger than Todd's, and she vividly recalls seeing it at the rocket show. She's itching to confront the twins about Scott's mysterious disappearance. Then, Knives drops a bomb about Neil's script being from the future. The doorbell rings. Someone's at the door. It's Scott. Ramona grills him, and he spills the beans. The twins and their robot pal were in on his vanishing act, but Scott drops a bombshell. Someone else was pulling the strings. On the last part of the episode, Scott's dropping the bomb that he's the puppet master behind the whole shebang.
Where we follow what happened in Season 1, Episode 7, titled To Scott, to Pilgrim.
The episode commences with Scott being drawn into a vegan-powered portal at the Rocket Club. Engaging in a time travel scuffle with a masked individual, they find themselves in the future. The masked figure reveals himself to be an older version of Scott, and together, they visit future Scott's residence. Older Scott confesses that defeating the League of Evil Exes was a monumental error in his life. Despite this, he allows Scott to utilize his virtual assistant, a voice reminiscent of the Virtual Boy, to glimpse into his own future. Scott learns about the remaining members of the League, details about his wedding with Ramona, and their subsequent divorce. Old Scott shares his musical instruments and mentions forming a band with the Katayanagi twins. Discovering Wallace's belongings in the house, Scott encounters Old Wallace. Although Old Wallace attempts to disclose the truth about their relationship, Old Scott intervenes. A confrontation ensues between Old Wallace and Old Scott in the home, with Old Wallace demanding an explanation for the unexpected visit. Old Scott confesses that he borrowed an old robot 01 from the twins to travel back in time with the intention of preventing Scott from defeating the evil exes and dating Ramona. He expresses frustration over his failed marriage with Ramona, but Scott advises him to communicate with old Ramona and work through their issues. Scott requests advice from Old Scott on how to salvage his relationship with Ramona and prevent a divorce. However, Old Scott becomes upset as Scott seems to blame him for the marriage's failure. In the meantime, Scott converses with old Robot 01, recalling their encounter at the rocket show. The robot reveals its ability to record everything around it. Seizing the opportunity, Scott decides to delve into the past and uncover events following Old Scott's abduction. Simultaneously, we witness old Ramona working as a Netflix DVD delivery person. Scott and Old Wallace visit old Ramona's residence, where she anticipates Scott's investigative move. She hands him one of Neil's books, explaining that she kept it for Scott to understand their shared history. Admitting to her own time-traveling escapade, she left the screenplay on Neil's desk, deeming her efforts futile due to the movie's failure. Scott disagrees, expressing gratitude, and old Ramona, moved by his sincerity, listens to his narrative. With old Ramona's support, Scott travels back in time to enlighten Ramona and others about the present situation. Present Ramona encounters her older self, and Kim captures memorable moments through photographs before the older Ramona departs. Scott apologizes to Knives for concealing Ramona from her and acknowledges the imprudence of dating a high schooler. Surprisingly, Knives expresses contentment, attributing her personal growth to the challenges, including Scott's demise. As Scott attempts to initiate a kiss with Ramona, an unseen force interrupts them. Pondering whether he still has to confront Ramona's exes, they encounter a new complication. Knives discloses that all of Ramona's exes might make an appearance at the Broadway musical they have planned. When the exes materialize at the musical venue, Ramona, Scott, and their companions pursue them. The episode concludes with the group entering the venue, ready to stage a remarkable performance and face the impending confrontation with Ramona's exes.
Where we follow what happened in Season 1, Episode 8, titled The World vs. Scott Pilgrim. In the final episode of Season 1, Scott Pilgrim's musical is the chosen setting. Scott must confront all the evil exes before the performance begins. However, he soon realizes that they are unaware of the barrier preventing him and Ramona Flowers from sharing a kiss. Instead of witnessing the musical, a colossal red blast envelops Scott Pilgrim, Ramona, and the exes, leaving the audience in suspense. Later, it is revealed that Gideon intended to blow up the theater with dynamite as revenge against Matthew Patel, who portrays Scott Pilgrim on stage. However, this diabolical plan takes an unexpected turn when Scott Pilgrim, Ramona, and the exes are suddenly transported away from the theater, encountering an older version of Scott Pilgrim from the future. Without hesitation, the older Scott Pilgrim attacks his younger counterpart, fueled by anger over the failure to keep away from Ramona. The older Scott unveils that he is the mastermind behind the force field that thwarted Scott Pilgrim's attempts to kiss Ramona. Despite messing with past Scott, he discloses that he and Ramona still tied the knot. However, fueled by the desire to erase them all and avert his own discontented future, he initiates a final confrontation. The ultimate face-off unfolds as even older Scott Pilgrim takes on everyone: Scott, Ramona, his friends, and exes simultaneously. His formidable strength is evident, having transformed into a monk and endured a decade of isolation, emerging bigger and stronger than ever after parting ways with Ramona. An enormous red burst transports everyone back to the theater, leaving Scott Pilgrim and Ramona isolated to confront an even older Scott Pilgrim. Scott desperately implores his older self to cease the conflict, but he is essentially facing his own reflection. Ramona contemplates whether being with Scott is the right choice, considering the potential outcomes. At the moment, future Ramona Flowers appears and confronts the even older Scott Pilgrim. She questions why he ignored her for a decade, explaining that she only needed some space. Despite the older Scott's pleas for reconciliation, she firmly declares that it's over. Upon witnessing the intense confrontation, young Ramona becomes uncertain about whether she should stay with Scott or repeat her past pattern of running away. However, she decides to break the cycle and, in a powerful moment, Super Ramona arrives. She sends even older Scott Pilgrim back to his time, shattering the force field. Super Ramona then kisses Scott, expressing her love and emphasizing that her past does not define her. Ramona undergoes significant character development as she confronts her fears and trauma. Scott Pilgrim and Ramona return to the theater, where they share a heartfelt kiss, igniting sparks between them. The young couple can now relish their love once more. Meanwhile, Matthew Patel advises Gideon to reclaim his empire, expressing disinterest after learning of Gideon's plan to harm him. The characters move forward in their lives. And in the epilogue, the episode concludes with Ramona changing her hair color and joining Scott and his friends outside, symbolizing a fresh start and a new chapter for the group. In a mid-credits scene, the evil ex's empire is revealed. Though the speaker remains unidentified, presumably Gideon, he declares that it's time for the true game to commence. Julie, presumably, chimes in, stating that the goose is loose in Hong Kong. The scene implies that Gideon has successfully reclaimed his evil plans along with his empire, setting the stage for a potential second season filled with new intrigue and challenges. If you managed to get this far, we sincerely thank you for watching the whole thing. If you have a movie or TV show that you want us to cover, just comment it down below. We might do a video of it in the future. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Check out our playlist for more recaps.